Shalom, hi Tzili.
Hi everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to another episode of Tzuzamen. Hi Tzipi.
And we are here
with Adi.
With Adi.
Okay.
He hasn't, there are many Adis, but thank you so
Adi
much.
Yekutieli, an artist, curator, social entrepreneur. If you're in Tel Aviv, we're in Israel now. If you're in Tel Aviv and you pass by the city hall now, the building of the city hall, you'll see a huge knitted carpet goes all the way from the roof to the bottom of the building. And this is one of Adi's projects.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Adi, can you tell us a little bit about it and what does it stand for?
Being involved in art community for many years, almost 25 years, it's a profession where I actually create opportunities for the community to express themselves and give them a stage and through the medium of art to present themselves. This project was done with about 500, how would I say it without being offensive? Elderly
the new young.
The new young from 30 different neighborhoods in Tel Aviv. And that is usually a population that is really put aside in terms of how society actually treats them. And it was important for me to do.
Not necessary.
And it was important for me to. It was important to do a project where they get actually center stage. The project itself, we went through. I work in a nonprofit called the Art and Community Association, and what we did was meet with the 30 different groups in their neighborhoods, and we asked each of them to create one knitted scarf. But since the art and community is not based on something that I have in mind and then they just execute, we created many different palettes of colors. We used about 55 different colors, and each group got a combination of colors, and then they each knitted their own scarf in the way they wanted to express themselves. And that took about 6 months to do, because we visited each one of them, we talked to them about the meaning of it and the importance of it, and then they did the work. They were asked to include also women in their neighborhoods that are that don't come to the community center, but are in hospitals, home alone, in different places. So the participation of each community was a complete outreach. And then we collected all the scarves. We went into a basketball court. We spread them all around. And that was the first time that we had to actually compose the final piece using all of them. And at that point, there's always this little prayer that it will actually work, because usually art and community projects, people say, oh, it's great for the process, but it doesn't create good art.
I wanted to elaborate on that a little bit and raise a question, because the community projects and art for community, or use the artists and the art for communities or for social causes, is taking place for a long time now, and it's growing and growing the whole world. Where do you put the line between art and community? Where does it stay as art? And why to use mostly art for project in communities? How do you draw the lines between everything? And I just want to mention that Adi is also an artist himself, and he has 2 kids who are great artists, Noah Yekutieli and Adam Yekutieli, excellent artists. So help me to draw the line between everything and how to define, and where does it stop to be art and where does it grow again?
Yeah, I think the main agenda is a social agenda. Art is a medium and a means that could connect people in terms of communities that have conflicts or have challenges, to raise issues, political issues, social issues, which usually need public participation besides demonstration. When we create things that could be in the public arena, but they were done and gave a voice to the people. Then we get to the professional. The line that you're talking about is the line of actually knowing how to do art. Usually, if the artist is humble enough and says, well, it's their statement, but I know how to translate it to be effective, that's the perfect balance, and it has the most impact. You know,
Where do you,
for example, if we choose
where do you give up a little bit on the artist, on the art side, and go more towards the social? And where do you keep rising the level of the art?
I don't. The social aspect of it will always be a priority, but I would always bring professionals from the art field to make sure that, let's say, if I do a discipline that I'm not versed in, I would bring the best sculptors to basically listen to the community, to their agenda, to the stories that they're telling, and then translate it in the most effective way in terms of the art medium.
So what medium are you using? What medium are you using? Is it painting? Is it sculpture?
Over the years, I've done 400 different projects.
Wow.
With 800,000 people.
Wow.
So, and we use very different types of mediums depending. It's very similar to go to a tailor to get a dress that is fitted to your own size, because it is an empowering situation.
Yes.
But since most people don't have the tool of art, it's like I'm the electrician. I know how to do the art. I know how to bring the people to the art, but they have to be translating the community and not telling the community to express what their idea is.
So what they start with?
Many times, what?
No, I'm asking.
So usually when we start.
No, they start with an image. You start with a short story. They start with.
Usually it depends what the project is about. For example, when I work with communities that have a conflict, an inner conflict within themselves, Jewish, Arab, secular, religious, etc., etc. We usually, I work with a technique that I developed called the metaphor technique, where they actually have a metaphor. It's images. I created 2,000 images.
Wow.
That you could actually talk about anything you want, but not directly. You talk through the image that you're actually looking at. So then people actually have an opportunity to actually listen to the other person, and then they start developing the story or what they want to express to the wider community outside. Like in this case.
Give me an example.
For example, I did a project about 2 years ago, where it was in a moshav in the north of Israel, where they built a new neighborhood. Now, the people that came from the new neighborhood wanted to come because they wanted a quality of life. And the people who were there for 50, 60 years did it from financial reasons. But then they became a community, but they were separated, and they developed into a conflict. Yes. So they didn't talk to each other, animosity started happening, and a lot of tensions as a result of that. So in their case, we started talking about sharing the stories of the place, the way it was established, different stories of that touched them from nostalgic, and they shared it with people who just came, a year or two ago. And the product that we did was a painting that was illustrated by somebody else that shows the view of that whole community, and inside there were the drawings of those stories, and it was hung in the central place of this community, and it was the first event in 10 years that everybody came to celebrate, because it wasn't and that was very, very exciting, and of course everybody shared and other things, and they started to interact.
Who invited you? How do you come to those places? Somebody calls you, somebody invites you?
At the beginning, I would approach communities you know, I came back to Israel after I was about 15 years. I lived in California, and I came when I thought peace is starting after the Oslo agreements. And 5 months after we arrived, Rabin was assassinated. But I was so in tune in that direction, and that's when I started. I built the first art workshops in Arab communities inside Israel, and then for about 2 years, I developed art workshops in Tulkarem, in Shechem, in Balata. And it was really, it's hard to believe now when nobody even talks about peace, but when we met between these communities, it was amazing what they produced together. Because sometimes if you want to overcome a certain conflict, you have to have a vision of it. You have to imagine it.
Right.
And that's where art comes in, because we
great
can
idea.
draw.
Follow up with, after executing a project and the process of working together, do you follow up on this community or this collaboration, or you just leave them and move on?
Look, many times the projects are continuing. And here, in the second Intifada, for example, that was it. You couldn't continue. But I think it's but I think as an artist, as a social entrepreneur, I always think about the dilemmas and always come back to them. After the collapse, after the Intifada, I waited a few years, and then I did a different project called Talking Kites, with 47,000 people in 300 different communities in Israel and in Palestine, drew on kites what they want to say to the person on the other side.
That's beautiful.
And that was that. And then the political situation became even more extreme. So then I went inside the green line, and we have many different dilemmas. The last few years I've been involved a lot in the whole notion of elderly people, because I think it's a very neglected community.
Right.
And I became I developed many different models that are now executed, that deal with the loneliness of people and about sharing the wisdom they have, and then their understandings about life and acknowledging their place. So I move between dilemmas. Sometimes I'm invited, sometimes I initiated it.
Tell me something.
You know.
This is really not, both you and Tzili, it seems so, believing that a step and another step and another step will bring a change. And you work very hard. Now, I understand, I don't have to ask a lot in order to know the enormous project and what you did, and I know what Tzili is doing. And you know, you keep doing it, and you go another step, another step, another step, and oh my God, and what?
It keeps maybe some optimism and some hope. And when you don't do it, you have politics. You know, politics that didn't prove anything constructive either. So sometimes people need to know that there is that possibility. When people meet together and they have their prejudice and they have their conflict and they actually realize that there is a place to talk, we have to start there. We can't guarantee, you know, no art changed the world. You know, the Guernica, Picasso didn't change, it didn't stop the war. You know, it doesn't. We document, by doing these projects, we document that at that time there were people who believed in something or had a certain impact, and to enlarge the circles of people that say, I'm willing to see that issue, I'm willing to be involved. And many times in the community, people give a chance to rebuild their community and resolve their conflict. And that's when I let them go, because I'm always I'm always an outsider. I spend sometimes I'm 2.5 years, 3 years in a project, but then I have to let go, because it's not about me anyway.
So did you try to go, and I didn't ask you actually, Tzili, did you, both of you actually, try to go to the Minister of Education and work from the system? So you can, you know, yeah, it goes back to my last question, because unless you...
I think it has two parts of the question, of the answer, because in many ways, if you want to bury something, then you go to the system, because the bureaucracy takes over, the political agenda takes over, the budget takes over, and it's very hard to break through and to maintain it, because it's like the last few years, you had so many elections, you know, you cannot get in to do anything, and it's almost like getting into a wall. At the same time, I don't think that we can afford, I mean, some of us, we cannot afford to stop and not doing it, because this is, even, you know, for the fact that maybe one day it will help somebody, or somebody will pick up the pieces and will change something, only that is, it's worthwhile to do the whole thing. So, but it's very different when you have arguments and conflicts, and it's different when you work with the elderly or with people with disabilities, or helping people getting over tough points because they need better maintenance. So it's all the same place.
It's different issues. It's different issues. Art and community can go to any social.
It's different.
For example, a few years ago, I did a project where it was something that I was approached to do, to raise awareness about the whole issue of women that are agunot, the ones who can't get divorced. And there were about, I think, 20 different organizations that were dealing with it, and yet there was no progress about 12 years ago. And then I developed a concept. I said, we're going to create a dress 21 meters high, 7 stories, that will tell the statement, and it will be placed in a central place to create actually a news event. By creating the news event, anyway, it was a very, you know, of course it had its challenges. But I remember that that once it got to be shown and executed, and thousands of people participated in it, it was something that first of all, it was magnificent, but it was something very crucial in the memory of all the people who participated. At the end of it, it actually Nashim Osot Shalom, the peace movement of women. About 3 years ago, the dress was shown there, and 30,000 women went in their march towards this dress. So that was the icon that actually raised, you know, lit their imaginations. And I'm saying it humbly because, you know, we never know what our impact is, but as long as we're here at the certain time that we're here, we have to do things that have to not always say what we can't do. Very easy to say, to be skeptical.
Right. As long as you don't give up, eventually you can find the crack to get in, and it settles someplace and it helps. But
so
every project I did, I was told that it cannot be done.
Of course,
Every project, after all this experience, they say, you know, we know you have so much experience and you're the best, blah, blah, blah. And yet I'm telling you, this is the hardest community and there's no way to do it. And that's usually the nekudat motza. That's the point where I start.
Mostly, it's mostly
like an embroidery.
Okay, so most of the stuff they do in public spaces, it's
what? No. In textiles, no.
No.
So what? What did you say?
What do you want to ask?
When you display something, you know, in public space, what is it? A painting? It's a drawing? It's a
lot of it. It's a lot of installations. It could be two-dimensional. It could be, let's say we installed, just a week ago, we installed in Dimona a project called Chokhmat Zikna, the wisdom of the
elderly.
Of getting old.
Elderly, where we did 13 portraits of the oldest people in Dimona about their understandings about life.
In the southern part of Israel.
Yeah, so
a lot of new immigrants from the Arab countries.
So at the end of it, we each of them was printed with a portrait and with what they had to say about life. and
Wow.
that is shown in the public arena. It's in the
Wow.
best, you know, in the main road in Dimona.
Wow.
It's a small thing, but it was a
It's
very
so small.
exciting, very emotional. The whole community came to see, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I think that,
Yeah. Did you
and
see
that's,
the
for
film?
example, it's a project, and
Right.
that's a project, for example, that now I'm trying to organize that it will be a nation, a
Yeah,
state
sure.
project. So it will be done in 200 communities and then developed into a book and so forth. And then, and that's where, you know, artists have to also, people who deal with this kind of thing, have to also deal with other aspects, the very
Right.
practical ones.
Right.
Who's going to participate, where we're going to get the funding, et cetera, et cetera.
Tell me something.
Even the knitting project, we're going to try to go now out, you know, to other communities and to communities abroad, because
Right.
it's a very empowering kind
Yes,
of project.
yes, and very compelling. Tell me, did you see the film Faces, Places Faces, Agnès Varda?
Yes.
Do you remember that she went around south of France or something
Yeah.
with a photographer and just took pictures of regular people, enlarged it and put it on the buildings, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And it became
yeah,
a very humanistic kind of connecting between people,
yeah.
ages.
Because I think, because it had something that had to do with acknowledgement.
Right.
Right.
You know, we think acknowledgement is something really minute, not that
No,
important.
it's all is
But when you
all-
acknowledge one, or you acknowledge the challenge that one has, or the challenge that a community has, even if you didn't solve it, you
right.
know, to solve it, you need the community, you need the government, you need many
Sure.
things.
We never
I'm just an
acknowledge
artist.
what happened with the Palestinians. I mean, yes, we need to have a
Yeah.
country. Yes, we came here. Yes, we built, but there was a
Yes.
price that somebody else paid, and we just have to acknowledge it.
Mhm.
Nobody says we are
I know.
going out of here. Nobody said we shouldn't have done it, maybe, but at least to acknowledge that we refuse, actually, right?
Adi, can you
Yeah, but
tell us a little
what,
bit-
yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the project of the garbage park?
Oh,
You know, who's now we're doing we did an open call for artists to change the main installation and the ceiling, and you know who got it out of 100 different applications?
Who?
Gil Yafman.
Wow.
Gil Yafman.
Wow.
And he just told me last week that you actually
is
know
it?
each other. Well, it was
Of
really,
course.
he's a great artist.
He's
What
a
is it?
wonderful artist. He's
what is it?
wonderful.
What you're talking about, guys?
Khiria is the place where
Park of the Khiria.
basically
Ah, Khiria.
all the
The
garbage.
garbage.
Yeah,
Sure,
all
the
the garbage
Sharon Park,
of
no?
It's not Sharon Park.
It
It's a
is?
separate, no, it doesn't matter.
It's
It's
near.
nearby, but
Okay, it's better
the
than-
compound where they actually do the separation and all of that. And inside there's a educational and center that had to do with awareness of the ecological dilemma. And I became the art director of the place. And now I bring in more and more art inside as a tool for raising awareness and education. And slowly it's becoming really a place where artists could express themselves, get support for what they do, which is important also because artists is also a community that is not really supported.
Right.
So I try to do that too.
So wait, so what did you say about garbage?
No, the Khiria is the
Oh,
garbage park.
what it used to be garbage, okay.
Yeah.
Because there
It's
is
all done with that awareness of the.
Right.
Yeah. We almost
Yeah.
entered it yesterday when we went back
It's
from.
very
Okay, we have to.
Adi
I
is doing a great job. Adi, you go and
Oh, that's it?
yes.
I didn't even
yes, you go.
start.
That's it.
We'll talk again. Well, thank you.
Oh.
Stay
Thank you,
put for a
Tzili.
second. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank
And
me.
see you
Thank
next.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.